All right, so I think I have everybody here. Do we have, hopefully not too much echo, you can hear me. My dashboard, I gotta confess, that is some sort of Windows XP looking dashboard. I can't compete with that. Modern web technology is not quite there. All right, so we have my slides up here. I'm gonna talk a little bit about something called Streamlit. Now, who here has used Streamlit before? Okay, so everybody. Well, okay, I shouldn't say everybody. A little over half the room. So this is a beginner talk about Streamlit, right? So I want to introduce Streamlit to people who have never heard of it. Maybe there aren't even Python programmers. I'm going to show a little bit about dashboards, a little bit about data cleaning, not too much. And then I'll show you how to actually use an LLM with Streamlit so you can chat with your data. Now, I've got some people in here that are probably a much bigger Streamlit expert than I am personally. So if you see something in here and you're like, want to chime in and be like, ha, there's this really cool way of doing it they just added in version 0.49, feel free, okay? So without any further ado, this is Streamlit. So let me just show you what we're building. And all of this is shared. I have links at the end to a GitHub repo. And there we are, assuming it doesn't crash. So this is the National Park Visitors Dashboard. This is a live demonstration. Let me make this a little bigger on the screen here. So yeah, that's ugly, but you can see it readable. This is an interactive dashboard. For those of you who have worked with Jupyter Notebooks, for those of you who have worked with React applications, Flask applications for doing a little bit of data analysis or data presentation, this is kind of the middle between those two, right? So we have this idea of, Jupyter Notebooks. We can log in, we can show some stuff, we can click the run in the cell, it goes through, it shows some charts. It's cool, it's interactive, you type into it, that's great. There's another side of things, right? We could build a whole React application that has interactive charts, has fetching of data from an API, it's real slick, no limits, but it takes a while to build. That said, of course, we could just have Claude or any of these other tools just kind of take our CSV file and build us a nice React dashboard out of it. But Streamlit's kind of that thing in the middle, right? Streamlit's what you want to use for like a prototype, for user experience testing. You want to do something that involves like an internal tool. Now, would I personally build like a SaaS on top of this? No, I'm sure probably somebody has. But this is not where you go for this, right? This is much more think like prototyping, internal tools, something you can share with people internally. That's where we want to go with this. So I took some open data. It's the visitation for a national park system. And I've got links to all that. And just made a really simple dashboard out of it, right? So I can come over here and pick a year out of this. And I can see the visitor counts in 2007. Yeah, it's a little hard to read just with this. But I've got 37 national parks, whatever it is these days. Personal goal of mine is to actually visit all, like I said, 450, whatever it is, units of the national park system. I'm up to about 300 and something of those, which is a sizable chunk. Most of the rest are really hard to get to. They tend to be very remote. But you can see that the largest over here, the visitor count, it's going to be Blue Ridge Parkway, which is it's effectively a highway, and so it's going to have a pretty big count. Some of the ones on the right-hand side, they're just not open very often. They're seasonal, they're out of the way. They don't have very high visitation. So we can see that with the chart here. We can see a table with the data, right? So we've got a table we can go through. And again, for those of you that are familiar with like the Jupyter Notebook, the Pandas data frame, this is just another way of working with data frames and showing tables, right? So we've got all that. And then the cool thing I want to show off is, let's just make sure this works. I can actually start to chat with this dashboard, right? So I can say, what was the most visited park? And this is the part where we're actually using LangChain. Now, let's see if that actually works. OK, so chat with my data down here. It's thinking. And it's actually chatted with the data, right? So it says Blue Ridge Parkway, 17,000, or 17 million rather. That's the right number, I would assume. What's cool is over here, I had filtered the amount of data from like the year 2005 to the year 2007, my Streamlit dashboard figured that out. Again, for all of you that are Python whizzes, this is a data frame, typical Pandas data frame, and I filtered it down based on the selection over here, the year, and I could even filter by park and drop some of these parks out if I wanted to. And it passed that chunk, basically the data frame is a CSV, as into the prompt. So very simple integration. Not your production class integration, right? Because this could use this could use a decent chunk of your context. But if you're working with a data set where you can filter and that reasonably falls into like a context limit, this is a lot simpler than setting up MCP or RAG or anything like that, right? Again, we're thinking prototype here. We're thinking internal tool, right? It may not make sense to completely productionize this tool right away. All right, so hopefully that covers what this is. Let me talk a little bit about how to build it. I don't want to read all of these slides out to you because a lot of it's, quite frankly, it's a bunch of Python code about data cleaning. But I do want to cover the tools that I use to build it. Got Streamlit. That's the key technology here. What makes the web framework very, how should I say, interactive without a lot of work on my end. We're using Pandas for the data wrangling, right? So again, typical Python data science, data exploration, data analysis. But you could use almost anything else that's data frame compatible, right? So there's a Python standard, I don't know, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there's like a data frame API that they're all basically compatible with. And I'm using Altair for charts, LangChain, of course, for LLM integration, and then it's got a little sidebar nav for a multi-page view. Here's the sample data set. So it turns out that when I downloaded this from the National Park Service, it was in a wide format, so I had columns for the years. That's great, but it doesn't lend itself well to this sort of analysis. So I used Melt to convert that to a long format. So pretty cool stuff. Here's just a rough data cleaning overview. I took the raw CSV file. I dropped the average column out of it because it actually gave me the average for like each year. I didn't really want that. I can calculate that myself if I need it. I dropped the empty year columns because the data wasn't completely clean. So there was also some weird columns in the middle that had no data. I don't know how it got in there. I used Melt to reshape it, which was just kind of a cool little quirk. Filled in anything that didn't have data, converted the types, and ended up with the final data frame. So again, I could kind of go through this if people are curious about the Pandas and the data framework, but it's all just sort of, here, there's my data cleaning, transforming from wide to long. I used Melt. I did a little bit more cleaning here. Set some sidebar filters. So this is really your Streamlit stuff. The part before that was just straight up data wrangling. I've got my data cleaning. I've got my Pandas data frames. This is where we're starting to get into Streamlit, right? And one thing I should show you is the code for this. While it's not necessarily the cleanest, I stuck everything into one app.py file, right? So if I just make this a little bit bigger, I've got everything in one app.py file. Again, thinking about this, you could organize this differently, right? But we're thinking prototype, we're thinking internal tool. And this whole thing is 126 lines of code, right? Now, if you all try to build this out in React or something, talking to a backend, fetching some data, it's gonna be a lot more than 126 lines of code. I think we all know that. No shade against React, right? Just this keeps it simple, and I don't know what Streamlit's necessarily doing under the hood, but I can just declare like I've got a text input, and it just reads out of it, and it's reactive. It's very nice. So just going through this as well, you can see that all the lines that I've got here, I've got the page set up. That's important. I've got the sidebar navigation set up, pulling in the data. And again, I don't have to do data clean on every single load, right? I could do some caching in here, but again, it's an exploration. The cool thing is that I've got multiple I've got multiple pages. So if I come back here, I can switch over to like park trends over time and see like different type of data than maybe the dashboard overview. I've got some key performance indicators here. So I'm pulling out the total visitors in 2005, the most visited park. Again, that's all interactive. If I switch this to 2010, I'll get the total visitors in 2010. So all very cool stuff. Just kind of coming back here, bar charts, KPI metrics, a couple things you can do. Here's how you add navigation with sidebar. Again, I got a sidebar. I got one line of code to configure a sidebar. So just everything in this is very concise, very terse, and very easy. So I like it. I got a line chart here using Altair. And again, just passing in a data frame. I'm selecting a series out of a data frame and passing it in and getting a chart out of it. And you don't have to use Altair. You can use pretty much anything else. All right, LangChain. How's that fit in? And again, you might be thinking to yourself, OK, I've got to integrate some chat component. I've got to bring in some JavaScript code to get that chat to like work out cleanly. I don't need to. This is just regular Python code. I can bring in LangChain itself. We've all heard about LangChain today, so I don't know that I need to introduce it again. But I'm using it for this chat with your CSV feature. And I'm not using a RAG, not using a vector store, just using a live filtered CSV data. Just again, want to be clear, consider your context size, your token limits, and your pricing here. Again, depending on what you're building, it's a prototype. You're not going to go over the limits, but be conscious. LangChain integration can be easier. I'm pulling in chat OpenAIs here, setting a temperature to 1. So that's all GPT-5 Mini apparently supports, and that's using 5 Mini. Here's how the data flows, right? So I've got the user putting a query into chat. That goes through Streamlit. It builds the prompt with a query, filters the data frame, passes that all through LangChain to the LLM, and it comes all the way back, right? So what does that actually look like in practice? It's this Python code right here. And again, up at the top, I'm pulling in filtered_df. That's my filtered data frame based on the radio buttons and the filters that I set up in the sidebar in Streamlit. Converting that to a CSV, and then just dumping in a very simple prompt. You are a helpful assistant. Of course, it'll answer other questions, but that's where the world of Guardrails comes in, which is something completely different presentation than this. So we're filling in the context, we're filling in the query, and that's about it. So this is how you invoke that using LangChain. And again, we're not doing streaming, we're not doing anything fancy. We're just doing a very simple chat completion. All right, so to keep this on wraps, I didn't want to go all the way into a whole bunch of different things, but we could use retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, to selectively include data. We could use model context protocol, which a few other people have talked about, to go out and maybe like talk to an API to get this data. Just depending on if we want the LLM to ask for specific information. So if we ask the LLM, OK, what were the top visitors in 2007, instead of passing the data along, the LLM would respond back with, OK, tell me what it is, and then I'll come up with a response. For all of you, if you wanted to try this out, try your own data set, try a different LLM, try a different model, just something to try out. And then also think about guardrails and observability. So you could use something like Langsmith to do some observability and check to see what chat messages are going through. And then again, if you were to actually deploy this, think about guardrails here, because you don't want some situation where someone's chatting with this thing and asking weird stuff, right? Make sure it stays on track. Just some optional stuff you could include: upload your own CSV. Again, how much code is it to upload a CSV into context? With Streamlit, it's not much. You can deploy it to the web. I'm not going to send the LLM version over to the web because I don't feel like running through all of my token limits or whatever, but here it is running on the community version of Streamlit. So this is just a public GitHub repo deployed to Streamlit Cloud. Cost me nothing to run. It fell asleep since the last time I worked on it, but popped it back up, and this is just about as live as you can get, all interactive and so forth. All right. Some ideas here if you want. Just consider data privacy, and follow the Streamlit tutorial. I've got a link here. Integrate an LLM yourself into that for the Uber data. Create a hobby data set and chat with it like your collectible collection. And then last, just to wrap things up, we've got an interactive dashboard in Python. I've got some code for all of you. Got the slides. I'll figure out a way to share it through the chat. We brought an LLM chat into the application. And again, the chat components are built into Streamlit. So I didn't do anything to get that chat to work. Like, it's built into Streamlit. Super simple. And quite frankly, I just kind of went through their tutorial and modified it just a little bit to work with LangChain, but not a big deal. Streamlit's great for prototypes, faster to build. Find your own data set. I've got some docs up here for Streamlit. I've got their chat with an LLM documentation, which kind of covers the chat side of things. Using OpenAI with LangChain and Python. If you're new to LangChain, that's a good way just to get started with the OpenAI API. You can find me at jefflinwood.com. That's my email address if you want to email me instead. And that's my open source project, which has nothing to do with this. It's not even in Python. And then last, this repo's up on my personal GitHub. It's public. This stuff's in a branch. All right, I think that should cover it. Anyone have any questions?
Questions? I have a comment. You know,
Sure.
we were playing with Streamlit about probably 2 years ago when we were trying to figure out like what the hell is this AI stuff. Well, our first labs were Streamlit. We basically hacked Google. Gosh, my brain just went. Excuse me. We're running notebooks on Google.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And using Streamlit to interact with our data, and it did not look as beautiful as this.
No, it's some really nice stuff.
Yeah, like I'm really impressed.
I have not met a back-end engineer that does not fall in love with Streamlit.
Right. Drop those front-end developers, just like, you know, kind of pull them out of the chain. I mean, again, just to get a simple project up, right? You know, we're not talking about something you'd actually deploy, right? We're just talking about a prototype.
I mean, it's simple and effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really great. Well, thank you so much, Jeff.
Sure.
Thank you so much. And Jeff, James, Collier, Sal, thank you so much for taking the time for this.